Today's lesson is going to be speed versus average speed. Are they the same thing? Before we get started, we need to make the foldable that you will use in order to take notes during this presentation. You picked up a piece of paper when you came into class. Take that piece of paper and fold it in half, hamburger style. Open it up. And now you're going to take your edges and you're going to fold them in to the center, like this. So now we have what we call the two-door or a shutter fold. Take and hold it so that it's sideways, and I only want you to take the top flap. We're not going to do anything to the bottom flap. You're going to take a pair of scissors, and on the top flap you're going to cut in the middle of that flap up to the fold and stop. So now we have 3 doors. 1, 2, and 3. I want you to label it like this: speed, instantaneous speed, and velocity. These will be the 3 things that we will discuss in this video presentation. So speed, instantaneous speed, and average speed. Okay? You can go ahead and open up the flap for speed because that's where we're going to start. Alright? So speed versus average speed. Is there a difference between the two? Well, let's look. When we talk about speed, most of you will tell me that it's how fast an object is traveling. So our definition is a distance traveled in a measure of time. So you've copied down that definition. Notice that we have 2 variables that are listed in this definition. We have distance and we have time. Those are the 2 variables that we need to take into consideration when we want to calculate speed. So our formula for speed is the same formula that you used in 6th grade, and it's going to be speed is equal to distance divided by time. Some of you may remember seeing it as S is equal to D over T. And some of you may remember the triangle where we have D on top and S and then T. Remember, we divided out, the triangle divides out, and this line that goes up and down this way means to multiply, and the line that goes across means to divide. As we work tomorrow in class, you'll be using some of this information, and this will become clear if you haven't used it. When we talk about numbers in science, we need to make sure that we put units to those numbers. Numbers can mean a variety of different things, especially in science. They can be a measure of volume, a measure of distance, a measure of time. So we need to make sure that we're using our units. We should have no naked numbers. So underneath the speed flap, you're still going to put the units. For distance in class, we will use the units of kilometers, meters, centimeters, and millimeters. For time, we will use hours, minutes, and seconds. Sometimes you will see second referred to as just an S. We may also use day, week, or month, but most of what we will use in class will be hours, minutes, and seconds. When you calculate everything out, we have a unit for speed. Our units for speed might be kilometers per hour, meter per minute, or meter per second, centimeters per second, or millimeters per second. please make sure that you've taken the time to write this information under the flap for speed. Okay? All right, we're going to take a trip. We're going to take a trip from Georgetown to Wichita Falls. It's roughly a 4-hour trip. We're going to say that you are going to travel for 2 hours at a speed of 150 kilometers per hour. You're going to stop to eat lunch, and that's going to take you an hour. And then you're going to travel another 2 hours at 150 kilometers per hour until you reach your destination. So my question to you is, what speed did you travel? If you look at the statements, you can determine the speed that you traveled. The only speed that is ever mentioned is 150 kilometers per hour. So for every hour that you traveled, you were traveling 150 kilometers per hour. Another thing to be conscious of is that when we calculated this, we were actually calculating something called instantaneous speed. So under the flap for instantaneous speed, you're going to define it as how fast an object is moving at a given moment in time. Also put this down. Every time you look at your car speedometer when your parents are driving and you see 35 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour, all of those are an instantaneous speed. Because at that moment in time, your car is traveling that speed that you see registered on your car's speedometer. This would be the instantaneous speed that we will see for our trip. All right, let's look at this trip again, but let's look at it in a little bit different viewpoint. Again, we're going to take a trip from Georgetown to Wichita Falls. We're going to travel for 2 hours at 150 kilometers per hour. We're going to stop for lunch. It's going to take us the hour. And then we're going to travel another 2 hours at 150 kilometers per hour. But now I want you to answer the question, how fast did you travel for the entire trip? Our question before was, what speed did you travel? Now I want you to look at how fast did you travel for the entire trip. So in order for us to do that, we have to calculate what's called average speed. So on your foldable, underneath the flap for average speed, write this definition. Average speed depends upon the total distance traveled by the total amount of time that it took. So here's our formula. Average speed equals total distance divided by total time. All right, so let's look at this problem. What I want you to do is I want you to take down this information underneath the average speed. We traveled 2 hours, so I'm going to write travel. And we traveled 2 hours at 150 kilometers per hour. And then we're going to rest for 1 hour, because that's when we're eating lunch, we're not traveling. And then it tells us that we traveled another 2 hours at 150 kilometers per hour. Make sure that you've written this information underneath your average speed flap. All right, let's go in and let's calculate this. How are we going to determine our total distance? Well, if we look at the information that's presented to us, It tells us 150 kilometers per hour. So that's telling me that every hour I traveled 150 kilometers. So if I traveled 2 hours, I'm going to take 2 times 150, which is going to be a total of 300 kilometers. And I did that twice. So 2 times 150 equals 300 kilometers. So to calculate average speed, remember we said it's total distance. So the total distance that I drove is 300 kilometers plus 300 kilometers. And I need to divide that by the total time that it took from start to finish. It means I have to take into account the entire time I was in the car or resting. So I drove for 2 hours. I rested for an hour. And then I drove for another 2 hours. All right, let's shorten this out. 300 plus 300 is 600 kilometers divided by 2 plus 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So 5 hours. Remember in math that when you go to solve a problem that looks like this, we know it's a division problem, that the number that's at the top goes in the house. So 600 divided by 5. 5 goes into 6 one time. 6 minus 5 is 1. Bring down my 0. 5 goes into 10 2 times. I subtract that, I get 0. Bring down my other 0. And now 5 goes into 0, 0. So my answer then is 120. 120 what? I have to have a unit. Here's the easy way. If you will always write out your units while you're working your problem, it will help you to determine what your unit is for your answer. So if I go in and I look, I've got kilometers over hours. So there's my answer. Please make sure that you've done this work on your foldable so that you have an example to remind you of how to calculate it. Tomorrow in class, we will be working some additional speed and average speed problems. We'll be using these two formulas and working with them. I also want you to think about these two questions. You picked up the sheet that has these two questions on it, and I want you to have the answers for them when you come into class. Be prepared to discuss. First off, was the speed and the average speed of the trip the same? Be able to explain your answer. And then 2, if a car travels at a constant speed over a period of time, the car's instantaneous speed and the average speed will be what? Make sure that you can explain your answer. Be prepared to discuss. Make sure that you are okay with these, and come to class tomorrow. See you then. Thank you. Bye.